On this episode of Money and Power, we talk about Memorial Day, why we honor our war dead, and of course, we pour one out for those who paid a debt that we can never possibly repay. But first, Kid Ink.
I got the money in the power. Yeah. Once you get a little, they just want to take you down, cuz we've been going hard for too long. Can't get enough, what is you on? Yeah. Really ain't nothing, I could drop that. Wake up in the morning, make it all day. It's nothing to get it poppin', wanna roll.
Welcome to episode 7 of Money and Power, our question related to finance, politics, and culture. I'm host Nathan Martin, and joining me from Michigan, a financial consultant and host of the Rob Talks Money podcast, Rob Johnson.
Howdy.
Also joining us from Ohio, later on in the show, two All-American heroes, of course, Jeremiah Martin and Jason Beardsley. And all together, the three of us are generally just the trio of talk helping you out there. But Beardsley is going to be joining us, and we'll kind of explain that. But how are you doing, Rob?
Doing well. Doing really well. Had a very busy week so far. So it's been going pretty well though.
Good. How was your Memorial Day weekend?
It was good. I spent the majority of, I think, actual Memorial Day, about 6 hours putting together a playhouse for my daughter. So that was a good time. And it was, I'm pretty proud of myself. It said with 3 people, it should take 5 hours. I did it by myself in 6. So,
well, there you go. So when we were younger, we were putting together a playhouse, not a playhouse, but it was like a swing set.
Yep.
And Dad was kind of making the swing set from scratch. It was kind of like one of those deals where you would go like Menards or whatever and get it.
Yep.
And so we're putting this together, and we're just having the hardest time with the drill bit, figuring things out or whatever. And our neighbor came over and started helping us out because he saw that we were struggling. And the neighbor realized that Dad had put the drill bit in reverse. And so
nice.
He had drilled like over a dozen holes with the drill bit in reverse.
That's a man right there.
I know.
I would have given up.
It's one of those good news, bad news things, you know? It's like, bad news, you made this a lot harder than it needed to be. But good news is, you know that if your drill's ever stuck in reverse, you can do it.
Yeah, I of course picked the hottest day of the year. It was like 94 out when I was doing it. And it was a treat.
We had the whole family over on Sunday. And we played, when my family comes over, my large extended family, when they come over, we typically play kickball. And what we did, because it was so hot out, we actually got baby pools. And this was actually Jeremiah's idea.
Oh, that's genius.
But we got baby pools as the bases. So first, second, and third were baby pools full of water.
That's awesome.
So, yeah,
That sounds like a good time.
It was a really fun time and enjoyable. And of course, another thing that we did on Sunday is that we recorded a Facebook Live. So our very first Facebook Live, Jeremiah, Jason Beardsley, and I recorded for about a half hour. Took me a lot longer to set up. This is what happens when my technical expert isn't there to assist us, but we figured out how to do it, and also to how to like bring in other videos and other content. I think I did a fairly good job. The only issue is that Jason Beardsley's audio cut out in just one little part, but besides that, I think it went really well, and over 800 views so far, which is pretty good for our first Facebook Live. So look for more of that content, guys. I think we're going to be doing more of these, at least on a more regular basis, because it was pretty fun. A little nerve-wracking because, you know, when I put my foot in my mouth on the podcast, we're able to edit it.
Yeah.
Not so much with a Facebook Live, but you did get a chance to hear all my kids in the background. of the Facebook Live. So.
Yeah. Well, could you imagine if we did live for our first few shows, all of the apologies we'd have to be tweeting out and
Oh, no, we would have been fired, and which like we're the ones running the show, so I don't even know how that would have worked. But
yeah.
I think our wives would have told us no mas, no mas.
Yep,
Like
you guys are done. They're gonna take over. It's gonna be Money and Power, the female edition.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyways, we have an awesome show up for you guys. We are going to do our news bits segment. We're going to then we took that Facebook Live and we cut up the audio, and so we're going to put that into this our reflections on Memorial Day as our initial segment. So obviously Rob won't be involved with that, and then we're going to kick back into feedback and parting shots. We're going to end the show like we typically do, just Rob and I. So that's kind of what's on deck for the show. And so now it is time for our look back at the weird, the inane, and the general happenings going on in the world by the crazy people who happen to live here. News bits.
News bits. Show me your bits of news.
All right. The worst jingle ever, but so bad we love it. All right, Rob, what do you got for news bits?
So it has been an interesting week in the news, to say the least. There has been a lot that has gone on between, on the financial side, there's a lot of tariffs that are going down right now. The economy is becoming a little bit more unstable because the cost of living is seemingly going up. There's a whole host of things to talk about, but the one thing I'm going to talk about this week is the NFL changing their rules during the national anthem. So basically, if you don't know, in last season and the season before that, there was a very large controversy over certain players. It was headed off by Colin Kaepernick, who at the time was a quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. He started protesting due to police brutality, and he would kneel during the national anthem. Well, this caught fire, and a lot of other teams participated in it. Dallas Cowboys, Philadelphia Eagles, most teams in the NFL had at least some players doing it. And they would kneel during the national anthem, and this caused a lot of controversy. Some people thought it was disrespectful. People on the other side thought that it was their freedom of speech to do so. Well, this during the owners' meeting for the offseason, this NFL offseason, the owners decided to make a change, and the NFL is going to change their rule and penalize and fine players who kneel during the national anthem. Now, they will have an opportunity to stay in the locker room, but if they come out and kneel on the field during the national anthem, they will be penalized or fined. So this is big, and what's more interesting is President Trump is taking some credit for this because he was very critical of it during the NFL season. Interestingly enough, he was more critical of the NFL protests than he was of Charlottesville, but we will leave that to the side. It's just really interesting to see how a couple of quotes here from him. He said, "I brought this out. This is a very winning, strong issue for me. Tell everyone you can't win this one. This one lifts me." So it's very much, as always, about President Trump and what he's doing. It's the NFL's decision. It's their organization. They can choose to do what they want. This is not a First Amendment issue, in my opinion, because it is their company, and the NFL has a right to protect their brand. And it's just like at work, you can't go into work and say whatever you want without being penalized. It's the same thing in the NFL. So I get both sides, but in my opinion, I think it's fine. I'm not kind of one way or the other. What do you think about it, Nathan?
Well, I'm obviously for. I agree with policy, and mainly because it kind of adopts the policy that exists in all the other major sports.
Exactly.
The big one being the NBA.
Yeah.
So the NBA is actually more restrictive on its players. It actually forces their players to participate in the national anthem. My understanding is that they're not allowed to stay in the locker room. That they have to come out and participate.
Okay, I didn't know that.
So I think that's my understanding. I haven't been able to find exactly anything to that effect but I did see it quoted a couple times in news articles I was writing. I was reading. So if that's the case, then I mean, regardless of whether I know that they are forced to stand and they during the national anthem. NBA players are. So whether they are forced to come out of the locker room or not, I don't fully know. It's my understanding that they are.
Yeah.
So this is not anything new. Now, some people will argue that the NBA they did that through their collective bargaining agreement. So the players kind of agreed to this, but then again, like during the collective bargaining agreement for the NFL, the players agreed to the rules set forward by the owners. So
Yeah.
I just kind of think that, listen, they are allowing them to not participate if they want. They can stay in the locker room, but if they come out, they need to respect the flag. I don't see an issue with that or a problem with that. I support that. Now, the thing that kind of drives me nuts is though people are saying this is censorship. It's not censorship. The NFL is not telling any player that they can't protest or talk about it on their social media feeds. They're not telling them that they can't talk about it in interviews with the media. Like, listen, if you have something to say about police brutality or any issue, especially if it's at all considered a social justice issue, I guarantee you ESPN is going to put you on their network and give you their platform.
At least 3 times.
I guarantee it. So don't talk about censorship. No one's censoring you. The other thing that kind of drives me nuts is when people are like, oh, well, they're not protesting the flag. They're protesting something else. That's inaccurate. Colin Kaepernick, when he was first asked why he was doing it, he said, this is a country that allows police brutality to take place, so I can't stand for the flag. I can't honor the flag.
Yeah.
He was protesting the flag. Now, other players may not have been. I can't speak to their motives. But Colin Kaepernick at the beginning sure was. And he was very clear about that. So, again, this isn't censorship. It happened, it's frustrating for me when I hear like Steve Kerr, coach of the Golden State Warriors, or others saying that, oh, this is the NFL being ridiculous, blah, blah, blah. It's like, you literally have the same rules, guys.
Yeah. I like Steve Kerr a lot. He's one of my favorite coaches in the NBA, and it was disappointing to hear him say that. And I think when I was listening to him talk about it a little bit more, he was saying that because it was league enforced rather than player enforced. And I think that was kind of what you were talking about a few minutes ago. But still, I think there's a bit of hypocrisy in what he said. I was disappointed. And he has really been a champion for liberal social issues in the NBA, which has been interesting to see that play out.
Well, yeah, and his comments about, like, I would love to sit down with Steve Kerr and get him some facts correct on some issues. Like, he always gets facts wrong when it comes to gun control.
Yep.
When it comes to some of these racial issues, I don't know. Him and Popovich have both been kind of outspoken, and I know that plays well to their team. So I'm not so hard on it. Yeah. But it's like this was blatant hypocrisy.
I do think a lot of it has to do with, I mean, when you're a coach, all you're doing 24/7 is coaching, analyzing tape, analyzing film. My suspicion, I'm not defending Steve Kerr, but my suspicion is that he doesn't have time, which isn't really an excuse, but he's not a scholar on any of these issues, and that clearly shows in his comments. So I would hope that had he had more time to look at this and rather just read headlines. And I don't know if he's just doing that, but his comments kind of speak to that. I think he would have a little bit more informed opinion. And that's the same thing with Pop over at the Spurs. Like you said, he's very similar as well. And sometimes I think that's, he's maybe grandstanding a bit, trying to, get the troops ready to go, which obviously didn't work for San Antonio this year. But I wonder how much of it is show and how much of it is actual passion behind it,
That's fair. So, hey, speaking of Steve Kerr, and I do want to say, like, I think Steve Kerr is one of the best coaches in the NBA.
Definitely.
If I had to rank it, I would probably say Popovich is 1, Steve Kerr is 2, and Brad Stevens is 3. as far as the top coaches in the NBA
Yeah,
right now.
I'd probably swap Brad Stevens with Eric Spoelstra from the Miami Heat. But yeah, that's definitely top 5 guys right there.
Well, that's only because you're biased.
Well, he's done some work in South Beach, I will say. So
Yeah, fair. All
So-
right, and so hey, speaking of what's going on, obviously the finals kick off.
yes,
By the time everyone
tomorrow.
hears this recording, the finals will be happening tonight on Thursday, starting out. So who do you got in? We can talk a little bit basketball
Sure.
because Jeremiah's not on here.
Won't bore him to tears.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have
who do
a
you have?
I have Golden State in 5. So I think Cleveland is going to win Game 3, and Golden State's going to win the 2 games before and the 2 games after.
That's exactly what I have. I have Golden State in 5.
Yep.
I can possibly see even Golden State sweep. I don't think I can get to 2 wins by Cleveland, but I think it's one of those situations that if they are able to pull off home court wins in games 3 and 4, that we might be looking at a 7-game series. But I can also see that the team, if they get behind by like 15, 20 points in like game 3 or in game 4, they just kind of fold it up. And
Yeah.
be like, okay, let's do the offseason.
Yeah, and I also think if Iguodala is healthy, it's a sweep. I think if he's 100%, he's gonna be defending James most of the time, I suspect. So I think it's gonna be a really tough series. Plus, Cleveland did a really nice job in Boston, and I'm not one of the ones who were like, if this would have happened, but Boston, just like Houston, missed a lot of shots in that Game 7.
Yeah, but I don't fault them for that because they were actually open.
Yeah,
Like someone was trying to say like, oh, this was on Brad Stevens because I was like, listen, he runs his offense for open shots.
Yep.
It's not exactly like they were just jacking up threes that were like off their wrong foot.
No, it was good
desperation
shots.
heaves. Every one of them was a good shot. It's just that now I think that Jason Tatum should have got the ball a lot more in the fourth quarter. Man, he's going to be a superstar. Isn't
Oh
he?
yeah, and I'm afraid of Boston next year when they get Irving and what's that dude? Get Gordon Hayward back.
Yeah. Hayward, Horford, Tatum,
Smart,
and Irving.
yeah, and Smart. It's just Smart off
And
the
then
bench. It's gonna
LeBron
be crazy.
James is going to Houston.
Think so? I think he's going to Los Angeles.
That's the rumor. The rumor is that so it depends on what he wants to do, right? If he's like, hey, I want to be a media mogul and I just want to live in LA, then yeah, I think he's going to go to LA. But if he's legitimate, I want to try to beat the Golden State Warriors. I think either Philadelphia or Houston have to be where he wants to go, right?
That was going to be my pick. If I had to pick where would be the best spot, I would think Philadelphia is probably the best spot for him. A lot of young talent. He doesn't have to play as much. He definitely doesn't have to play 48 minutes like he has been.
Yeah. And then he can stay in the East.
Yep,
Which
and
is
have a pretty easy
lot
road.
easier night in and night out. I mean, it just is, right?
Of course.
I mean, you want to be able to play. You want to be able to play like Atlanta and, I can't think of another East team, but like, just.
I mean, Orlando, right? You got your crap Magic team. The Raptors were probably gonna have a flop season next year.
Orlando.
So
Yeah. It doesn't matter how good Toronto is. LeBron owns them. So yeah, I think we're on the same page there. Golden State in 5.
Yep, write it down. And if they take it to 7 games, I'll donate $100 to someone's charity if they write in. How about that? So
there you go.
If they take if Cleveland takes it to Game 7, you pick the charity first one who writes in, and I'll donate $100 to it. How's that?
Sports gambling just became legal, and Rob is already all over it. So yeah, do that for feedback.
Yeah. There's no upside for me either, though. So
I know, right? It's like somebody donates to your charity or whatever.
It's like a multi-level marketing. There's no upside for the person putting the money in.
I don't think you'll have an issue there.
Yeah.
So my news bit, the other serious bit of news, obviously, is along the same lines where people don't quite understand what the First Amendment is. All right, so obviously in the news, Roseanne, she tweeted. Did you see these tweets?
Oh
before
yeah,
she deleted them.
they were terrible.
So they were overtly racist tweets. I mean, I
Yeah,
don't even think they were subvertly racist tweets.
no,
Overtly racist tweets. The show got canceled. I mean, I think that Disney ABC didn't have a choice, to be honest with you.
for sure.
And listen, I understand there's a double media. There's a double standard. If it was writing something that was overtly racist about a conservative, I'm not sure that she would have been fired. But I don't know that necessarily matters because I mean, what's right is right, and I think that it's important we all understand like what she did was horrible. She was given a second chance, in spite of all the crazy stuff that she's written in the past. She was given a second chance, and she kind of blew it. I mean, that's kind of the bottom line for me on that. Now, there's a lot of people who are like, well, there are liberals who have called Donald Trump an orangutan. And it's like, all right, is calling someone an orangutan rude? Yes. So if you call a white person an orangutan, that's kind of rude because you're basically insinuating they don't have much intelligence.
Yeah.
Right? That's rude. If you call a black person comparable to a primate, that's racist.
Yeah. Do you happen to have the tweet queued up?
I don't have it. And it's been deleted. And I honestly, like you can go and find it if you'd like. But
Yeah.
it's
Basically she compares Valerie Jarrett to
Yes.
Planet of the Apes. That's basically the gist of it, and it's abhorrent. It's the worst thing I think I've read in a very very long time. Left or right, I mean it's awful.
yeah. And so people are comparing it to Sarah Sanders being made fun of. It's like, look, we have to come. All right, so I'm going to speak kind of to conservatives. Okay. We have to be able to have the intellectual honesty to, when something is done that shouldn't have been done, admit that it was ugly, it was bad, and then move on from it. We don't have to defend the indefensible just because it's done by someone who, and in this case, she's not even on our side, so to speak. I mean, she's pretty liberal. So, but she was adopted by some people in the conservative movement because of her stance on Trump, etc. But we don't have to do that. We don't have to defend the indefensible because it's somebody on our side. But it's okay to admit, what, somebody on our side, although she's not even on our side, but somebody who's, I guess, loosely associated with our side, did something indefensible. And, I've heard people like, well, this is just PC. This is just her First Amendment rights. Listen, like, nobody's locking her up and throwing her in jail.
Right.
Like for my company, like when I'm trying to sell our product somewhere, I can't just start swearing at customers. Now on Facebook, I can swear, or I can swear in the general public because it's a First Amendment issue. But you know what?
But if they saw you do that on
Twitter,
Twitter,
understand what's actually going on for the First Amendment.
Yeah, and if they saw you do that on Twitter and they thought that harmed their brand, they would have the right to fire you, and rightfully so. Right.
Now, the thing where it would be a First Amendment issue in that case would be if they tried to fire me for ideological reasons.
Yes, exactly right.
That's where someone actually has a thing to stand on. Okay, so if you're getting fired because you're a conservative, and this goes back to earlier stuff we've talked about when it comes to like Google and Facebook, and their employees, right?
Yeah.
You have you shouldn't be able to be fired because of your religion and because of your ideology.
Yeah, exactly right.
Those are actual First Amendment civil right protections.
Yep. And I was looking.
That's not what's happening.
And it's interesting because in her tweet storm, she said that she's going to be giving Twitter a break for a while. Well, this just happened about 15 minutes ago. So she had written on Twitter, "I just wish ABC had not thrown two of the greatest actors in the world out with me, Lori and John. I'm so sick over this. They will never have better character actors on their network." And then 2 minutes later, She retweets this guy who says, "You're not the bad guy, Roseanne. As we say in New Jersey, do the right thing, fight for your life and freedom of speech. Millions of us here have your back." Why? Why do you have her back? She said an awful thing, and you're going to defend it. It's absurd.
Now, listen, she deleted it. She apologized for it, and it didn't save her job. And so now she's kind of going back on the apology and trying to defend it.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing, too, is like, if it was a sincere apology, then we just move on.
Yeah.
Like, hey, but even then, a sincere apology doesn't mean you escape the consequences of your action.
Right.
That's our news bits.
I want to add one more thing on if I can to that.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So there was another piece that came out that said maybe Fox will pick up Roseanne because it picked up Last Man Standing. Now, Last Man Standing, for those of you who do not know, is a show that was on ABC, I think for 6 or 7 years. It's a very good show. It's Tim Allen. And it was canceled, even though it was one of their highest rating shows. Now, there was a lot of controversy over this, and they said it was canceled. People on the outside said it was canceled because Tim Allen's character and his persona in real life, they're both conservative. The network said, no, it had nothing to do with that. They were phasing out sitcoms, and then they brought back Roseanne. So I don't know how that works. But so they're saying that maybe Fox will pick up Roseanne because they picked up Last Man Standing. Well, this is two very different circumstances. So I wouldn't hinge Roseanne coming back. I hope she doesn't. I mean, I wasn't a fan beforehand, and I was pretty sick to see some people on the right champion her as an ideal conservative, which is absurd. But her and Tim Allen are demonstrably different people in every sense imaginable. So there's a very good reason why Tim Allen's show got picked up on Fox, and I don't think Roseanne Barr's will get picked up again.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Now, I'm going to speak to another thing here.
Yeah.
I'm going to go in a little bit of a rant here.
All right.
So warning. All right. We have a tendency to try to look for kind of people who kind of represent our view in places that don't necessarily represent it. We do this in Christendom a lot. You know, when there's like when there's a pop star or a rapper who starts talking about God, we're like, oh my goodness, they're talking about their faith. This is so amazing. It's such a great thing. And then inevitably something's going to happen and we're going to be let down by this person, right? And it's like we have to come to the understanding that just because someone shares some of our viewpoints doesn't mean that there's somebody to be propped up in those viewpoints.
Yeah.
Just like if someone said something positive about Jesus, I'm not going to necessarily prop them up like I would a pastor or someone else. You know what I'm saying? So I think that we do this on all kind of sides, and it can be really frustrating to watch from the outside.
For sure.
You know who's the worst in the Christendom thing? Okay.
I don't know who. I got some names.
Here we go. I'm gonna go after another podcast here, but the Relevant podcast.
Okay.
It is inevitably. I mean, I would love at some point I would love to do a parody of the podcast, just because all the time when they're talking about artists who are bringing up God, like inevitably, like it's not even really talking about God. It's almost like, wow, they said GD in their song. That's God. So they mentioned it.
Oh, no.
Hey, they're talking about faith. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
I don't like, they talked about on one of their episodes, they talked about Kesha's praying song, right?
Yeah.
And the song is not about the redemptive power of forgiveness and praying. It is not about that. But they trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
Yeah.
It doesn't work ideologically. We have to make sure that we're actually looking for like examples out there.
So you mean to tell me Eminem's song Rap God is not about the sick bars that Jesus can drop?
It completely is, obviously, Rob. I mean, he mentions God, so he's obviously open to his faith discussion.
Okay.
And obviously millions of people could be saved just listening to Rap God.
That makes sense. When you said who's the worst at this, I was going to say Bono, but we'll talk about that later, I'm sure.
We will. All right. So What you're going to hear now is a discussion that took place on Sunday on Facebook Live. So you're going to hear kids in the background. You're going to hear a lot of that stuff. You can watch the Facebook Live on our Facebook page as well, if you would like to see it there and see Jason Beardsley smoking a pretty sweet cigar while he discusses things and runs through the entire military history of the United States off the top of his head, which is absolutely phenomenal, by the way.
It's pretty amazing.
Unfortunately, that's the segment that kind of got a little bit wonky. So we're going to try to put as much of that, even though it's very, very low sound quality, we're going to try to put as much of that as possible, just so you can witness that what he's doing during that segment. Usually, when the sound was going out, I could hear the sound was going out, and usually I would have interrupted and been like, "Hey, Jason, but he was on a roll, and I was not going to stop it. It was a thing of beauty, even if it was not experienced in optimal audio quality.
Yeah.
And I would argue that Jason Beardsley in semi-optimal audio quality is better than any of us in optimal audio quality. So
it's pretty true.
I hope. So anyways, that's what you're going to hear next. And I hope you listen. I hope you appreciate it. And please give us some feedback on what you think.
All right. We are live, I believe. Let's hope. So this is a kind of experiment for us, so bear with us as we go through this. But we kind of got together as a group and thought, what better way to celebrate Memorial Day than to talk about Memorial Day and kind of what it means to us. And we have all lost comrades and compatriots in arms in battle, and so kind of want to reflect on that and kind of discuss that amongst ourselves. So thank you for joining, if you're joining us, and then also this is going to be a bonus podcast as well. So thank you to Jason Beardsley for joining us, and Jeremiah is here, and I'm here, of course. And so, Jason, I'm just going to kick it off to you. Memorial Day, what does it mean to you? Why does it hold special significance in your heart? And kind of talk to us about some, a story or two, if you will, of those that you remember the most on this day.
Hey, thanks, Nathan. Thank you, Jeremiah, for having me on. But what an amazing weekend for us and as Americans, really, to stop, reflect, and look backwards, basically to, I think, the heroes that served among us that never came back from the battlefield. And we've lost them from the beginning of this sort of continent, this experiment in the American government system, all the way to, recent losses on today's battlefield. And so what it really means is we're looking after, I think, we'll call it the legacy or the heritage that was earned for us, not just by, simple dialogue, or not just by passive action, but by actual violent action at times, by men and women who stood for a cause, for a purpose, and were willing to give their ultimate sacrifice, not just in word, but in deed, as they laid down their lives, as the saying goes, so that others may live. So when we come upon a weekend like this, it's our chance to stop for just a few moments and make sure that we don't go too fast past how we got here, who those people were, but most importantly, what drove them to that cause, or what made them willing to sacrifice, and make sure that we take advantage of that to grow it better, to grow it forward, to make the American experiment everything that they had hoped it could be. Whether they laid down their arms in the Revolution, or in the Civil War, or in World War I or II, or so many other conflicts, or where they are today, in Iraq, Afghanistan. These are men and women who took up a desire to serve the rest of us. So I think to us, it's, especially if you're a service member, it's just a chance to go back and remember those people that either inspired us, walked alongside us, led us, and never had a chance to make it back. But we get to spend time with our families. If you have the family, or we get to celebrate with a picnic or Memorial Day barbecue, they don't have that any longer. And if we just kind of ignore that or bypass it or too quickly look by it, then we're doing a disservice to everything they laid down their lives for. And so I love this occasion. If you're in Washington, D.C., you can see dozens of memorials, or anywhere around the country, there's a graveyard nearby or a cemetery that caters to the veterans. And it's an appropriate thing to stop and pause and reflect, not just on who they were, but on why they did what they did. I think that to me is the most important thing, knowing the why.
Yeah, outstanding. And of course, as always, well said. Well said. Jeremiah.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've noticed is, especially online, when you see people post about Memorial Day as it starts to roll around each year, is that you hear different sentiments relating to thanking veterans, to thanking those who are currently serving, remember everyone deployed, and even issues related to veteran suicide. And so part of the reason that we wanted to get together and have this discussion too is, what is Memorial Day? What was it meant to be? How can we best honor those who have gone before us? Because at the end of the day, us three here together are veterans. We have served, but it's not about us, So if you thank us for a service, it's appreciated, sure, and it's appreciated any time of the year. But especially this time of year, it's not about us. It's not about those of us who are still in the uniform. It's about those who, like you said, Beardsley, who didn't make it back, who aren't able to enjoy that next Memorial Day or that next Veterans Day. And that's something really important to remember, that it's not about us as veterans. It's not about us that are currently serving. It's about those who never made it home.
Yeah, absolutely. And I lost somebody with my unit when we were deployed, and many of us have lost. I think of those who we know who have lost someone close and dear to their hearts. I know that Karen and Billy Vaughn hold a special place in all of our hearts here, and the things that Aaron lived for, and things that she continues to fight for, even to this day. So it's this is a somber time, and it's important for us to understand that it's not our day, and so I get really uncomfortable when people thank me, but on the flip side, I don't get that uncomfortable when people are celebrating Memorial Day, or they're watching a baseball game, because I think that Ronald Reagan in 1985, he kind of talked about it, and so actually I'm going to play a clip from a Ronald Reagan speech on Memorial Day that we can reflect on.
Some time back, I received, in the name of our country, the bodies of 4 Marines who had died while on active duty. I said then that there is a special sadness that accompanies the death of a serviceman, for we're never quite good enough to them. Not really, we can't be, because what they gave us is beyond our powers to repay. And so when a serviceman dies, it's a tear in the fabric, a break in the whole, and all we can do is remember. It is, in a way, an odd thing to honor those who died in defense of our country, in defense of us, in wars far away. The imagination plays a trick. We see these soldiers in our mind as old and wise. We see them as something like the founding fathers, grave and gray-haired. But most of them were boys when they died, and they gave up 2 lives, the one they were living and the one they would have lived. When they died, they gave up their chance to be husbands and fathers and grandfathers. They gave up their chance to be revered old men. They gave up everything for our country, for us. We owe them a debt we can never repay. All we can do is remember them and what they did and why they had to be brave for us.
Man, I miss that guy. just the pure statesman and man. But I think it's really a valuable testament to what this weekend's all about. But going back to what I was saying, these men and women, they gave up two lives, right? Their current life and their future life. And I know that if I was giving up my future life for those around us, I want it to constantly be a solemn occasion of them remembering me. I want them to actually go out and kind of live their lives, because that's the purpose. The reason that we have freedom is not just so we can have just the abstract political freedom, but it's so we can actually enjoy that freedom. And that we can actually do things, and we can actually gather together in a football stadium without fears for our lives, and we can gather together in churches without fears for our lives, and we can actually participate in community at a level that those who have gone before us have never been able to achieve it, and that we can sit on a Sunday afternoon and record a Facebook Live, and that we can participate in the technology and the things that we have, that all falls into it. But it's important to remember who gave us the ability to do that. And it's those men and women who sacrificed so that we could experience that.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you'll hear people say, it's this weekend it's not about barbecues and picnics. And while that's true, it's not. I would add to that, it's not only about those things, but in some ways it is about those things. I don't think that we should be ashamed about having a good time. I don't think we should be ashamed about celebrating that freedom that has been given to us. Those of us that have lost friends and brothers or sisters in arms. I know that those people would not want us, every single day being just a solemn and somber remembrance of them. There's a time and a place for that, of course. And I also want to be sensitive to those that, Memorial Day is a tough time every time it comes around. And I want to be sensitive to that. But at the same time, there is something to be said for celebrating that freedom that's been given to us. It came at a cost. It came at a price. It came at a heavy cost.
Yeah.
But in some ways, that's all the more reason to celebrate. Not that those lives had to be given, but because of those sacrifices, we are where we're at today, and we can enjoy those freedoms.
I think it's it becomes abstract at times when we talk about the burdens or the cost of freedom, or these people in abstraction. So I think on Memorial Day it's appropriate to at least get a hybrid summary, if you will, of where we've been and how we got here. When I think back to the regular Continental Army fighting alongside the British and the French and Indian War for control of something like the Monongahela or Allegheny Rivers and the conflicts there, and carving out a defense of places like Fort Duquesne and Washington, who famously fights in that, and we lose many there, and then 20 years later, 15 years later, we end up in another place where Lexington and Concord, you hear the shot heard around the world, and men in arms stood up again and willing to lay down their lives to resolve this question as to whether we could govern ourselves, or whether we were only stuck governing by the king. And then even years after that, not many, we have this this great rebellion in the western states in Kentucky at the time, the Whiskey Rebellion, where we sent arms out to potentially quell what was an internal conflict and how we decide how America protests, what is the limit of our protests. And then we pick up again in President Jefferson's term in like 1801, 1805 or something, with the Barbary Coast, where the Mediterranean Sea was navigable, but it was being tyrannized by Pasha of Tripoli. We sent a handful of Marines and an old army general down into the desert, with 300 camels to come back and release our sailors, burn our ships, and make sure that we had free trade along the Mediterranean. That was something the French didn't do, the English didn't do it, the Spanish couldn't do it, but a young country, the United States, could totally do it. And we weren't done then. I mean, the British came back in the War of 1812 to give us a second smackdown, if you will. They burned our capital in Baltimore. We lost soldiers to the cause again, defending that capital. And then again, you've got Fort McHenry being bombed all through the night, where Francis Scott Key writes this meaningful poem to capture how he felt about the flag, and seeing it for the first time in his mind as a unifying force. And then we get into places like the Battle of Lake Erie, where an overwhelming British fleet who is superior to the United States gets bested by guys like Commander McDonough, who end up, again, saving the cause of liberty. And then you go into the places like the Alamo and Last Stand, where Davy Crockett, Jim Bowie, and guys lay down their lives to carve out the freedoms for something that would only be annexed in the Mexican-American in 1846 or 1848. And so we have another piece of our fabric of our cloth kind of being sewn in together. And then you get to the tragedy of the Civil War, where brothers and cousins and friends begin to lay down their lives in front of each other. Men lie down in blood-soaked fields of Gettysburg. Joshua Lawrence Chamber famously wins the left arm with a little round top, decides at the risk of losing his life to make that charge and support and stand in firm place, saying, no, we will not give up this land. And we see it again in Spanish America, lay down our lives to liberate the Cubans. And then in 1901, the Boxer Rebellion in China, far-flung places that Reagan talks about, 2,000 missionaries were slaughtered, and Christians and people that were Westerns. Nobody had any defense of them at the time, and we sent our Marines to once again. These are the kind of people that stood up. And then in 1914, 16, and 17, in World War I, we sent our men to go liberate the continent of Europe. That was one of the bloodiest tragedies of all time. We hoped that this would end all wars. We would end up right back at it. World War II and Bastogne, and laid down on the beaches of Normandy, 10,000 a day. We moved past that to Korea. We're now 50 years, 60 years past that. Comity among the parties, but we had men that died in the frozen fields of the chosen reservoir, carving out a fruity defend the South. And again, fling our men into harm's way in Vietnam to support another small country against overlords in China, Norway, again in Great Britain, Grenada, Lebanon, and Panama.
Yeah.
This is the truth. This is not the abstract. This is the guy who says, from World War II, charging the islands in Iwo Jima or South Pacific, that, he's down to his last bullets in his magazine. And I heard an old veteran talking about saving those last rounds and using his knife because he didn't want to be without that last round of ammunition. Men that laid down beside him in the numbers of hundreds and thousands. Over and over again, what we see is a willingness to serve something greater than ourselves. And I like to take that back to, I think, one of the greatest speeches of all time, where Pericles is, Thucydides is writing the words of Pericles in this great funeral oration, recommending that the Athenians, who had lost their service members in this war, this great war, they had to stop and pause and reflect. What was it that drove them to this cause? What was it that inspired them? What I like, he says, is that what really inspired him is us. At the time, it was Athens, but today it's us. It's America. It's what you said, Nathan. It's driving by on a Sunday and seeing your church parking lots filled, or seeing kids play out on the playground, or joining the baseball leagues, or soccer, football, whatever they like. It's about watching someone grow up, pursue their dream in acting or singing or art. It's about a civilization that allows you to be whatever it is you want. You're not tied down to your dad's job. If he was a plumber, if your mom was a teacher, you get to be who you want. In America, we uniquely stood up and said the individual has the right to charge his own destiny, and he may lose or win on that. And some people chose their destiny in the service of others, and that was their greatest achievement, and they died in the battlefield. That takes us from the abstract idea of who served and what they did to a very concrete idea of men and women who were willing over and over again to place themselves in the most tragic, violent circumstances so that those of us who didn't fall on the battlefield can build this experiment better every day. I think to me that helps us, bring it back to a visceral sort of something you can touch, something you can actually smell and feel. I think that's what Memorial Day is about.
That was awesome. We lost a little bit of sound between the Korean War and the Persian Gulf War there, but it's you came back strong there, which is good. All right. Let's see here. I think I'm picking up a little echo from you, Beardsley.
All right, what do you need me to do?
Can you just mute for a second?
You bet.
All right. Perfect. Yep, that's what it was coming from. I just want to make sure it wasn't coming from the other gremlins. So, all right, I'm gonna read something that I wrote a while back, and it just kind of encapsulates Memorial Day for me. And so, if you can bear with me here, I'm gonna read this, and then we'll do some closing comments, and then we'll go ahead and let everyone enjoy their Memorial Day and their personal times of reflection. But so this is what I wrote. Drip, drip, drip. As I stood in the rain on an afternoon in April, my thoughts were on how cold my rain-soaked uniform felt on my weary body as raindrops dripped from my headgear. We had been standing at attention for what seemed like forever. Usually during these formations, there is a lot of under-breath talking and joking. After all, most of the time we are in these formations for a dog and pony show. But this time was different. That morning, when volunteers were asked for to go to an honorable transfer of 3 of Ohio's fallen, most of us volunteered. Sure, it would be cold and rainy, but these were our fellow soldiers and Ohioans. So in the reverent silence, as we awaited the C-130 carrying our fallen comrades, my mind began to wander to an April 7 years earlier. I was stationed in Iraq along the Iranian border. Caldwell actually wasn't too bad of a place to reside for a year. Our sleeping quarters were in a building with the officers and other members of headquarters, and our area of operations was relatively quiet compared to what our brethren were experiencing out west. It was my day off, April 2005. All of a sudden, one captain told me that there was a firefight going on, and our troops were ambushed. The information was incomplete, but it was enough to get me to get dressed and head in. We knew there were injuries, but we did not know how severe or how many. As our Squadron S1 accountability person, it was my job to find out and report to regiment. After a couple hours, we found out they were in a Baghdad hospital. Some were serious. There was a death. But the question was who, and was it one of ours? We closed down the phone banks and internet service until we could find out. And as I finally got through to the hospital, they were rattling off those injured. I wrote them down. And then Staff Sergeant Stephen Kennedy, Kilo, India, Alpha. My heart stopped. We had heard a rumor that Staff Sergeant Kennedy had been killed, but this was final. As we lined up as a squadron to pay our final respects by saluting the infamous rifle boots and Kevlar, it was solemn. A wave of regret over most of us. We now had a debt we couldn't ever repay. We now had to live as to not taint that he had done for us. Rest in peace, Sergeant First Class Kennedy, April 4th, 2005, Turkey Village, Iraq. Drip, drip, drip. As the unmistakable hum of the C-130 nears where we are, the families are now ushered out, joined by the top commanders and the governor. The worst part is seeing the kids. I had resolved not to shed a tear, but that breaks me. My mind flashes back to June 2004 when I said goodbye to my 14-month-old. I remember turning to Mandy and saying, "She has no clue what is about to happen. Neither do those kids." My heart breaks as tears join the endless parade of droplets down my uniform. As the caskets go by, we salute. It is the ultimate respect. It is a respect that is earned, not by deed, but by position. Regardless of ranks, these soldiers have achieved such a position. They have given us their last full measure of devotion. They have earned everything we have to give. 1, 2, 3 heroes loaded by an honor guard, whose performance is so professional, so dignified. As the last hearse pulls away, and as we march back to the air hangar, that feeling comes back. They gave their service, they gave their optimism, they gave their lives. They gave everything to support and defend this nation built on life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. John Adams said, "It will cost us to maintain this declaration and support and defend these states. Yet through all the gloom I can see rays of ravishing light and glory. I can see that the end is worth more than all the means." What do we owe them for these rays of ravishing light and glory, burning bright in our hearts today? We owe our service, we owe our optimism, and we owe our lives. And that is why we must remember. Rest in peace, Captain Nick Rosansky, Master Sergeant Jeffrey Reich, and Master Sergeant John Hannon. And I wrote that in 2012 after that. But I think that that is a reflection of what this day means to me and something I reflect on every single year to try to grasp. So, all right, gentlemen, your final comments, and then we'll go ahead and wrap us up.
Well, for me, just want to reiterate, in the midst of the picnics and the barbecues and the family time, take some time to honor the fallen. Take some time to remember those who sacrificed so much, and the families and everyone they left behind. But at the same time, enjoy your friends, your family, and your freedom that they provided for us. So.
Beardsley, final comments?
Yeah, I think I'd have to say, listen, the greatness of this experiment has been defended in blood, and the way we honor those who fell is, number one, we remember their sacrifice. We ask ourselves, number two, why? And then number three, we make some gesture, some commitment to act in a way that honors that. And for me, that's leadership. Leadership in the family, whether you're husband or wife, son, brother, daughter, sister, doesn't matter. Leadership in your community, getting in front of people and inspiring them about what it was that you believed made your service great. And even if you're not in the military, what it is makes this country great. And then how do you make it even better? There's a lot of people that will complain. There's a lot of people that will bemoan or apologize, or they'll talk about all the negative. But for those of us who truly believe something great has been done here, it's our duty and our obligation, if we really believe in that sacrifice, to get in front of our own lives and lead in a way that lives up to that. We go over the top and into the teeth in our everyday life, whether that's in our career, whether that's in service to the military, or whether that's inside our families. Don't let someone else lead us down a road that you don't want to go. And it's incumbent upon those of us who know what America actually stands for to continue this experiment. That to me is what we start on Memorial Day every year.
Amen. All right. Thank you guys for joining us in this Facebook Live. If you enjoyed it, please share it with all your friends and family, and join us on the Money and Power podcast as well, as we talk about similar topics. So for Jeremiah Martin, for Jason Beardsley, I'm Nathan Martin. Thank you for joining us.
To the fallen.
So Rob, hearing all kind of our general discussion about Memorial Day, what were your initial thoughts, and did you I don't want to say, did you learn anything? I want to assume that, but like, what were your kind of takeaways from that?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you have three guys who have served the country sit down and have an honest conversation about, the meaning of Memorial Day, and as Beardsley went through, the the great American history, it's you always learn something, and that's the neat thing about that I like about this show in particular is that none of us really know a whole lot. I mean, you and Jeremiah obviously do because you guys are all related, but kind of every week you get to kind of peel back another layer, and sitting there and hearing you guys talk about it was fascinating. One thing that I will admit to you that I was extremely ignorant on until I'm pretty sure it was this year, which is a bit embarrassing, but I conflated Memorial Day with Veterans Day. Now, I've never served, which isn't really an excuse to conflate the two, but I didn't know. I thought Memorial Day was primarily for fallen soldiers, but I thought it was also for those who had previously served, which is not the case. And then I saw someone explain it in a way that it's kind of two, even though they're all soldiers or former soldiers or fallen soldiers, it's kind of two different divisions. Is that right?
Yeah. So it's essentially, kind of just to generally recap, it's essentially we're honoring those who made everything else possible.
Yeah, which is different than Veterans Day, wherein you honor everyone who has served or is currently serving as well, right? Active duty. Yep, that's what I thought. Yep. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's important. I mean, it's important. I was listening to Ben Shapiro, is a guy that I like quite a bit, and he did a whole rundown on Memorial Day, and it used to be called Decoration Day, and there's been some legislation in Congress to it used to be held on May 30th. And they were talking about moving it around, and that's something that I would definitely be for, is kind of moving it around, so that way people wouldn't just look at it as a long weekend, but an actual day to remember the people who paid the ultimate price. So I think it's really interesting. He gave a 45-minute history on it, and it was fascinating. So
awesome. All right. So next up, we're going to talk about feedback. We didn't really get that much feedback, although we did get some, as I'm pulling up, because we did get some reviews on the podcast episode page. But Rob, how can people get a hold of us and offer up some feedback and questions about future topics and their thoughts on our topics we've talked about?
Yeah, so if you want to get a hold of us, you can reach out. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram are all at MoneyPowerPod. Our email is moneypowerpod@gmail.com. And you can leave a review on, I believe reviews are open on Facebook, iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher Radio. So if you like the show, if you're digging what we're talking about and you want to drop us a review, those are the modes to do it.
All right, so we have got some podcast reviews. Someone said, I love this podcast so much, I would literally exchange my firstborn child for another episode. Thank you for your service.
Wow.
So
I didn't know Bono was a listener.
They must have a teenager as a firstborn child. Another one said, love these guys, keep it up, heart emoji. So just a couple of those that are out there. Thank you. We do have that 5 out of 5 rating and review. So if you do enjoy this, please give us that rating. It's important for us. So.
Yeah, and feel free, if you're listening, feel free to be a part of the show, to jump in, and if you have talking points, or if you have an opinion, even if you disagree. Me, Jeremiah, and Nathan, we don't always agree with each other, so it's completely fine to disagree kindly in a response, an email or a message on Facebook. Don't be a jerk about it, but you can definitely disagree.
All right, so at this point, it's important for me to let everyone know that this episode is brought to you by Strikeforce Energy. Please use coupon code NAP for 20% off all your orders at strikeforceenergy.com. And when you do that, not only are you going to get a great product that's going to keep you awake with high energy and no crash, but you are also going to support the podcast. And we appreciate all those who have done so far.
Absolutely. Great product. I use it daily, every other day. It's a really good product.
All right. So now we come to the part of the podcast that is hopefully not your favorite part of the podcast, but it is that time. Parting shots. All right, Rob, what do you got?
All right, so this is something that I'm actually going to be talking about on my show this week. So for those of you who don't know, I do another show called Rob Talks Money. It is definitely not as fun as this show. I can openly say that because it's primarily financial, which is probably not a great plug for the show. But if you really dig money, it's a good show for you. So this week I'm going to be talking about an article that came out in Money Magazine. And so I'm stylistically different than the majority of financial consultants on the market. So if you look at, your Dave Ramsey, Susie Orman, a lot of these people, when they meet with people, their primary tool for motivation, whether they want to note it or not, is shame. So they are really into getting down on people. Not necessarily Ramsey, but sometimes you hear it on his radio show. As a matter of fact, a lot of people that listen to my show say you are so much nicer than Dave Ramsey, which I guess is a compliment. So I am not a big proponent of using shame to motivate people in any way. So whether you're getting on someone about what they're doing with their money or how they're living their life, shame is normally not a motivation tool. Normally it sinks them deeper into whatever they're doing. That's true in finance. That's true in social issues, drinking, drug use, whatever it is. Shame is usually an accelerant for whatever lifestyle they're doing. It's not usually a deterrent. I don't have the article from Money Magazine in front of me right now, but I'm pretty well versed and I've read it several times. Basically, the gist of it was they interviewed a financial consultant, and he said that it's difficult for people to survive on one income and retire with a 401k. He said that dream is practically dead. So people living on, and he cited things like wages not going up in 15 years, which is not true. He cited things like employer contributions to 401ks going down, which is not true. He cited that 401ks owned by employers are charging outrageous fees, which across the board is not true, speaking on an average. And he used a lot of these tools to dwell up an emotion in people, to make them feel like they are not doing a good enough job if both spouses aren't working. Now, if both spouses have to work, I'm completely fine with that. But I think statistically, and even if you wanted to make an argument from emotion, it's better for kids if at least one parent stays at home. I don't know how anyone could disagree with that. Now, I get it. Sometimes that's not possible, and that's fine. There's no shame in that. But to tell someone that they're doing it wrong because someone is staying at home and not working is completely absurd. And it made me so angry when I read it. I was telling my wife about it earlier, and I said, I can't believe that people are using this as a primary motivating tool to encourage people to do better with money. So you're staying at home, and you could be going out there and making $40,000 to $60,000 more per year instead of watching your kids? How dare you? I mean, it's just such a backwards argument, and it pissed me off to no end. I was so angry when I read it, if you can't tell. And so I'm going to dedicate about 30 minutes to this on my show this week, so you can look for the same anger, because I have plenty left in the tank when I talk about it on this week's show.
Yeah, so do better, financial consultants. Do better.
Yeah, something,
Yeah,
or just quit.
That's disappointing. Yeah, well, so my wife is a stay-at-home mom. Now, that doesn't mean that she doesn't quote unquote work, because she has her own business at home.
Yep.
And we're a part of like 3 MLMs. No, I'm joking. But no, she has her own business at home. We are part of one MLM, and we've talked about that before. I'm sure we're going to have that as a topic at some point. But she makes a little there. But the bottom line is, when we were first married, we wanted to have a family, and she said that she would rather stay home with the kids. And it's my job to make that a reality for her. And it's my belief that it's my job to make that a reality for her, and work as hard as I can to make that a reality. And that's why I have a full-time job and like 3 part-time jobs to do that. But we've also made sacrifices along the way, and we've decided that our level of financial security and happiness is going to be different than maybe somebody else's. So it is what it is. So yeah,
Yeah.
I hate people that shame it. And the worst part is just people who they kind of are judgy on well, why isn't she helping out? And I assure you, when it comes to the amount of hours that I put in or the amount of hours that she puts in, she does way more and above and beyond when it comes to everything than I do. So
Yeah.
it's please.
Just for an anecdote for that. So I work full time, about 50 hours a week. I run one company. Apart from that, and I was doing my master's degree full time. My wife was still busier than me, and that's the truth. That's the absolute truth. She was up later. In most cases, she was up earlier, and that's it. It's tough. Like I'm not, and there are terrible moms out there. So I'm not saying all moms are saints or anything like that, because that's not the case. But the moms that work and truly invest in their kids, they bust their ass far more than, sorry, mom, than any more than most people. And that's just the truth, because it's an exhausting, focus-driven job. You don't really get, if you're investing the time, you don't really get the time off like most people do, unless you want Netflix to raise your kids or whatever. But
Right.
the good moms don't do that, and that's a great thing.
Yep. So, all right. So my parting shot. Obviously, over in Ireland, they had a vote, a referendum vote, basically to legalize abortion. There are a lot of ways that I could go with this, but I'm just going to kind of speak from the heart here. It was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking to see a culture of death embraced. And I'm sure at some point we're going to talk about abortion. We've alluded to it on several podcasts already, but
Yeah.
it was for someone to feel that they don't have civil rights because they don't have the ability to kill an unborn child is incredulous. It's heartbreaking. It's a lot of other words, but heartbreaking is the one that I'm going to go with, because I think that's the one that's going to keep me a little level-headed. There are a couple things I would like to recommend in this, and it's not for the faint of heart. All right, so one thing I'm going to recommend is it is talking about the business of abortion, and it's called Blood Money. It's available. The full documentary is available on YouTube. You can also purchase the DVD. I'm going to warn you, if this is at all an emotional issue for you, I think everyone should watch this movie. But almost like everyone should watch like Schindler's List to fully understand the full weight and breadth of the Holocaust. So I would encourage that, but it should incense you, and also it is heartbreaking, and it's a hard watch. There's a lot of blood on all of our hands. And this goes for progressive Christians. This goes for the church. This goes for conservative Christians. This goes, there's a deep failure by on the behalf of children by us in the larger community. And until we fully come to grips with that, I don't know what to say. Our souls are in a bad place.
Yeah.
As a country.
Yeah, for sure. 1 million children per year are killed by abortion in America. And now abortion is legal up to 20 weeks in Ireland, which was previously banned, apart from medical sign off. And it really does show the times that we're in and where things are going socially. I'm anxious to see if there's going to be a shift socially back towards I'll just call it what it is, logic and reason when it comes to the life of unborn children. I don't understand it. I don't understand the argument from the pro-choice side, and even if you're not Christian, if you're not religious, there are philosophical and biological arguments that are demonstrably sound for the pro-life movement, but people put choice, quote unquote choice, over all of that because apparently that's more important.
Yeah. So like I said, we'll discuss this at some point, but
yeah,
it is heartbreaking. And I guess the parting shot goes to all of us. We just need to do better. So, all right, Rob, we did it. We made it through, just the two of us.
Yep.
Just the two of us.
No, not at all.
No?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
All right. Well, that wraps up another episode of Money and Power. For Rob Johnson, Jeremiah Martin, and the great Jason Beardsley, I am Nathan Martin saying so long, good night, and thank you for listening.
I got the money and the power. Once you get a little, they just wanna take you down, cuz we've been going